This is Hammond.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist podcast. Thanks for joining us. If you like what you're listening to, please go to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast.
How's it going, Hammond?
It's going good.
Kind of stumbled out of the blocks there with our intro.
It's a long weekend. I'm going to get one thing out of the way now. Here's my happy thing for the week.
Okay, we're supposed to do them at the end. You missed the point of the happy thing.
It's all good. The book that I've been talking about forever and have spent like a year and a half working on, it's called Queer Disbelief. Camille Barajic is the writer. But if you go on Amazon and type in Queer Disbelief, it's now available.
Yay.
You can get it in your hands. I will one day have them in my hands.
Are you Prime eligible?
Yes, I think.
Are you?
It should be.
I don't know how that works.
It should be Prime eligible.
Queer
Yeah, get a copy. Get a copy now.
I don't get a fucking free copy? Are you talking to me or are you talking to our people?
I don't get a free copy.
Yeah, it's Prime eligible.
Yeah, it is.
Nice.
Everyone go get it. So, it's there. We're going to send it out to all the Kickstarter backers very soon, but it's available for anybody. If you like it, leave a nice review.
Excellent.
Cool. I'm done with that.
Okay.
All right. And I totally won't talk about it every week for the next several weeks.
No.
Let me start with something we ended with last week, which is that I think when we left off, we talked about the CDC banning a certain number of words.
Yeah, so that got clarified.
It got clarified, yeah. So the story that I had heard is that the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, had, and this is based on a Washington Post article, they had banned a certain number of words from appearing in the documents they were preparing for their budget.
Right.
This is all paperwork that has to be approved by like White House officials, basically. And the list included vulnerable, entitlement, diversity,
fetus,
transgender, evidence-based, and science-based. Yeah, it's just a ridiculous list. And you're like, of course the Trump administration would not like evidence-based and transgender. Of course they wouldn't. And no wonder they had to not use those words. And that was the initial reaction. And certainly the Washington Post article that led to that said these were forbidden words in these documents for the CDC. Since then, and this is literally like a week ago, since then we've gotten some clarification on that, which is to say they're not banned. And the people who said you shouldn't use these words, they were not even the political appointees. The people who were passing this message along were actually the career politicians who are there forever. They are essentially nonpartisan. So why were they doing it? And this is what we heard from other people.
My understanding was that they weren't saying that these words are banned, but they said if you want to get funding, be mindful of using these words, as the Trump White House, is less likely to approve anything that includes those words. Is that
right? That's pretty much the idea. You still have to get approval from the White House in this budget. So you may want to avoid transgender because if you include it, let's say you're doing research on some sort of disease that affects people, and specifically in that community or something, you're not going to get the funding for it if they say, oh, this supports transgender people. No.
Or even words like vulnerable. Like when you use words like vulnerable in a science context, it's not like animals that are vulnerable or the environment. It's like this population is vulnerable to this disease or this malnutrition or whatever. So it's still lot of them.
The White House is still anti-science, and the fact that you have to tiptoe around them to get approval for the stuff suggests a couple things. One is that they would be upset if you said evidence-based or science-based.
I mean, upset, I feel like isn't the right word. I think just like
reactionary.
Yeah, or just dismissive. Like they're not going to give you the funding that you need.
And it also suggests that they're stupid enough that they won't catch your euphemisms for all this stuff.
Yeah, that's a lot to fucking deal with. Today I was doing it's Friday the 22nd. Happy birthday to my brother Kevin.
Hey.
He's 35, so that means he can run for president.
Please.
Yeah, he won't. He'd be terrible at it.
At least Kevin. He knows.
It's not going to stop him. Anyway, so I was doing some last minute Christmas shopping today, like a fool, and I was listening to Sawbones. They talked about this exact podcast, this exact topic. It's a podcast with Dr. Sydney McElroy, her husband Justin, who's like a comedian personality, and they discuss medical history. And so she discussed the beginning of how the CDC was founded, and got into this topic. And what she said, and I'm basing this off research that she's done. I trust her research in general. That while people are always careful about the language that they use, and that's nothing unusual.
Yeah.
It is, from what you can find, unprecedented that they went to the extent of saying, like, here are red flag words, avoid them. And that's not...
That's not typical.
It's not typical. It's not super great for science.
No, it's not. So, like the Washington Post article that started all this, it's like half right, half wrong. You can adjust the numbers as you will. They're right that people are saying you shouldn't use these words, but it's not because Trump said don't do it. It's because Trump officials, it's reading the room. And the room is really stupid.
Yeah. Yes, correct.
So there you go. Let me go to this totally, I wasn't expecting this one, but okay, there's a lot of lawsuits that get filed over public displays of like nativity scenes, especially when the government approves it all.
Oh, I remember this, the war on Christmas.
Yes, it's the war on Christmas. And usually what atheists are saying is, we don't care if you have a nativity scene in front of the courthouse so much. I mean, we wish it wasn't there at all. But if you have it, you also have to allow other groups to put up displays. You can't just have a nativity scene. You can't just promote Christianity.
Right.
So along comes this guy, Renee Salm. He is from Oregon. He lives in Eugene, Oregon. I guess in Eugene, they have street banners. It's kind of like... above the streets, you have these giant signs hanging above. Yeah, you see it everywhere.
You don't see it around here, but yeah.
Yeah, and so there are 3 of them specifically that the government allows you to purchase. You could say, you could put up your own sign here. And one of them said, Christmas, and underneath it, attend a church of your choice, and Jesus, celebrate his birth. And so this guy sees it, and he's like, well, that's obviously pushing a Christian message. So he threatened, literally, I want to make sure I get this right. He said that I'm trying to find a lawyer who's interested in taking this on. I feel like I'm being assaulted, telling me to go to church and celebrate Jesus.
Ooh,
which, sure you are. But look, the point is, if it's illegal, then it's illegal. We could talk about that. We could talk about a possible lawsuit or something.
Oh, that's my computer.
Hi, computer.
I was trying to look up a funny thing, and it played Christmas music at me.
So this guy sees the sign. He has this overblown reaction. Here's the problem with where he's coming from. He's arguing that this is government's promotion of Christianity. It's not.
It's not.
It's not. Because the government made very clear, no, you could do this too. If you have a sign and you want to follow our guidelines and pay the fee that we charge everybody,
gotcha.
You could put up whatever you want. In fact, I don't even like their policy. Their policy is like anything goes. And they literally said, well, during a city council meeting, they had this discussion. One councilor asked the attorney for the city, would the city permit a banner for an event in support of the KKK? And the attorney was like, yes. So it's a bad policy. Like, anyone can put up a sign at the moment, assuming they follow all the other rules.
Yeah.
But the problem with this guy's threatened lawsuit is that it's not like he tried to put up an atheist banner and got banned. He just saw the Christian sign, freaked the hell out, and raised a fuss about it, which is stupid.
Yeah, sorry,
that's
dude.
not a problem. That's not a government problem. That's a you problem.
Right, yeah, and we're
on your side.
Yeah, it's the worst when somebody who you fundamentally agree with says something dumb.
Yes.
Yeah, no, and especially, I feel like these kinds of lawsuits, these sort of church-state separation with regard to nativities, are ground that is to be tread lightly and delicately, because we do come off as nasty Grinches when we do it. And while I believe in the reason, it's definitely not somewhere I want to get overzealous with,
right,
or display any frivolity and just throw around lawsuits, because that's not.
I mean, you shouldn't complain about it until you know, oh, am I allowed to put up a thing? Is this a permit? Did I have to apply months ago and I just missed the cutoff? What's the deal?
Right.
You got to know how the rules are played before you say this is discrimination or a promotion of something. Then we can have a conversation about whether they're doing something wrong. But as it stands, the policy's not discriminatory. It should be against hate speech, but it's not even.
Yeah.
Okay, that was weird.
Yeah, that is strange.
What do you got?
Let's see. So let's start with Australian news.
This is what I like to hear.
So there is a gentleman. No, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole today with regard to Australian politics, and I learned that I don't get it and frankly don't care that much. So there's a gentleman named Scott Morrison, who is a member of the Australian House of Representatives since 2007. He's also the federal treasurer, and he's part of the Liberal Party of Australia.
Okay.
Here's the twisteroo, Hemmett.
Uh-huh.
The Liberal Party of Australia is the Conservative Party of Australia.
God.
It's the Labour Party that is the Liberal Party, I think. And that's literally
Go on.
Somebody, Simon, his name is, like, I posted something about how he's like very, very frustrated that Simon Hosking, who is on Facebook, and I just ganked this from his feed. He just it just doesn't make sense. He explained it to me in some words, but the paragraph got long and I lost it.
So what's this guy doing in
the important part of this. So he said, and this is the Sydney Morning Herald headline, "I'm not going to put up with it anymore. Morrison vows to defend Christianity in 2018.
Yes, they are under attack. When I think of Christian persecution, I think Australia.
So here's the thing that I find really... Okay, so
what's he basing that on?
Just observation. just
Because they just approved marriage equality or something, therefore you got to bring Jesus back?
Essentially, yeah. So he's one of the leading religious conservatives in the present government, and he wants to play a leading role next year in the, quote, debate about enshrining further protections for religious freedom in law.
Okay, because one of the big issues now that marriage equality has passed is what is Australia going to do about if you go to a church and you want to get married,
right.
Does a priest have to marry you?
Right.
And the answer in the U.S. anyway is no.
Right.
And if you want to get a wedding cake for your same-sex wedding, do they have to sell it to
right.
you? So okay, they're trying to fight to make sure that stuff is happening.
So, and here's what I think is very interesting is some of the kind of discussion that he has that let me read the quote. So he declared that it all starts when you allow religious freedoms to be eroded, mockery to be made of your faith or religious festivals. It always starts innocently, and it's always just a joke, just like most discrimination does. So he followed that up with he's going to call it out. He's seen what he's seen the last year. He's taken the decision more recently that he's not going to put up with that anymore, and I don't think my colleagues will either.
Mockery's fine.
Right. So
what's wrong with that?
First of all, apparently they questioned if Mr. Morrison had, and I quote, this is the most Australian sentence I've ever heard in my fucking life, does he have the leadership baton in his knapsack? It's just...
So this took place at government summer camp.
Well, yeah. So he is one of the front runners to run the Conservative Party in the future. But that's just a really excellent turn of phrase that I want to introduce to our listeners.
Yes.
Here's what I think is really interesting about this. And obviously, I disagree with him on fundamentally what's going on. But I kind of had this same, forgive the phrase, come to Jesus moment last year after the election that I was like, okay, I'm going to start calling people on their bullshit, anti-feminist garbage and their sexist shit. And, you keep hearing it, and it's just pervasive, and it's just a joke. And, starting now, no more. I'm going to be that, buzzkill, wet blanket person who, calls people out on their sexist bullshit. And I feel like he's having that same moment himself of, he feels like Christianity is getting kicked around, and he has decided he's going to be the one. Now, the difference between him and me is that I have zero influence on zero laws.
But you have actual examples of times people have been.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not tell
whatever.
you that he had very concrete examples?
Oh, what are his examples of Christian persecution?
Mr. Morrison recently took the Greens' Senator McKim, I don't know what it doesn't matter, to task for mocking Christmas after he and fellow... it's a party.
Yeah. I posted about that guy.
Yeah. So Senator McKim and Peter Whish-Wilson, which is, wow, what a name, posted an image on social media that stated, quote, Mary non-denominational... I'm going to take two on that one. Is that all right?
Go for it.
Mary non-denominational seasonal festivity, which is excellent.
He posted that picture
very,
on
very
Facebook.
Good.
Basically, is a slap in the face to all the, you have to say Merry Christmas. And they're like, haha, we didn't. Just as a joke. And the funniest part about that is when all the trolls came onto his Facebook page and they're like, you can't do that. You're offending me. You're being over the top. This is blasphemous or whatever. He would just respond to everybody. Merry Christmas, Jessica. No emoticon, nothing. Just Merry Christmas. What's your name? Period. And he did that over and over. It was glorious.
Bless his
so
heart.
He's upset that a guy put up, Merry non-denominational Christmas or something.
So I think it's between that and...
That's his example of Christian persecution?
Well, yeah, that was the thing that tipped him off. He also said, quote, I'm always reluctant to talk about the religion issue. But in truth, he, from what I could see in this article, he only has made one speech that involved his own religion. So
he doesn't get freaked. He's not one of those people who talks about this all the time.
Right. He's reluctant to talk about religion, blah, blah, blah. But when it is front and center in a debate like that of same-sex marriage, then obviously you can't avoid it.
Again, same-sex marriage in the U.S. has not hurt any Christians. They are free to do...
Have you talked to every Christian, Emmett?
Yes, and that's why I know this.
Congratulations.
Nothing has happened to them that has hurt them in any meaningful way, other than their continued bigotry by some Christians just further alienates the other Christians. Mm-hmm. So nothing has happened. They have nothing to worry about in Australia.
No, but he's saber rattling and all that fun stuff.
Sure, because he has nothing else to do because everything is fine.
Yeah. So all of my... I have one more political one, and then I have one political one, two feminist ones, and a Christmas one.
Go.
Which one do you want?
The last one.
The Christmas one. So, okay, this is really a blip more than anything else. I don't know if you saw this. Has happened December 11th, so it's been, a week and a half. But Ivanka Trump posted a picture of her and some other white women. I don't know who they are. And it just says Happy Holidays. And God damn it, that's fucking funny to me. It's just...
Why is Ivanka Trump waging a war on Christmas?
I don't know. It's just... it was just a lot for me to handle. Anyway.
I like it.
Oh God, I have that, that plugin on Chrome that changes Donald Trump's tweets to, child scribbles.
No, but yeah.
So I have that just for
Still
funsies.
On, yeah.
And it's funny until, I'm just reading this Fortune.com article, and it's a Donald Trump tweet, and it's written in, child scrawl.
Oh, my God, I love that.
And it's really off-putting when it's out of context. Anyway, that's my little
I like that.
Ivanka Trump jab. Do you have any other
Since
holiday?
we're still... you talked about Florida. I'll talk about the UK. Whatever. The BBC has religious programming. It's a government-run network, radio station, TV, whatever. And they have a director of radio and education. They appointed a new guy to the job last month. Mm-hmm. And he's also, in that position, in charge of their religious programming because they do a lot of it. And, they get criticized for being very Christian, though, occasionally they try to bring in other voices from other religions. I've heard them bring on a humanist every now and then. It doesn't happen much. But in an interview, the guy who's now in charge, James Purnell, he said in an interview, they asked him, "Are you an atheist?" It's literally, "Are you a religious man?" asked the host. And Purnell said, "I'm not."
Oh.
And the host was like, "Isn't that a problem, though? You're the head of the BBC's religious programming. Blah, blah, blah. You're now doing part of this very busy job and you don't even believe." Which is... a horrible argument to make. Why does it matter? I don't care if he's Muslim or Christian or an atheist. He has a job to do, which is put out programming that people want to listen to, that people will learn something from, be interested in. Well, you can do that as an atheist.
But also, if you say, okay, I'm not... no matter who you have in that seat, they're not going to believe in most of what they're saying, right?
So if you have a Christian in the position, whoa, you can't. You don't know anything about other religions or atheism. So
I would argue that he probably has the most objective look into religion.
If anything, yeah. And you know what? When they've done surveys and they're like, who knows most about religions, the facts about what people believe, atheists score highest.
Yeah.
So it's the problem isn't that the guy's an atheist. If you have criticism about what he's doing, let's hear it.
Right.
But the fact that he's an atheist, and this made so many headlines about the fact that an atheist is running this religious programming, and it shouldn't be. Mm-hmm. It's totally irrelevant. It's a non-thing. And Purnell said later on, those of us who work at the BBC have a wide range of views. Our core thing is to make great programs, to reflect what the audience wants us to do.
Perfect.
And make programs that serve that.
I mean, people who run children's programs aren't children. Like, people can have other opinions.
One reader on some UK website was quoted as saying, "My cornflakes almost landed on the floor when I heard the head of the religious programs was openly boasting about being an atheist." Cornflakes landed on the floor.
Oh my God, that is excellent.
Yeah, so
Wait, there's a lot to break down. So his cornflakes almost landed on the floor, which is...
I guess that means he tipped the bowl.
That's the most wholesome way somebody can show anger besides, like, dropping a teacup. Because he was openly boasting.
Which means he didn't even pour milk inside that bowl yet. If it's just the cornflakes on the floor, like he must have been halfway through putting his cereal
like
together.
He was like poured it in and just threw it over his head like a cartoon.
Yeah.
What?
He added, it's the equivalent of putting an anarchist in charge of a prison.
A prison, huh?
Which again, I don't care if the anarchist is in charge of the prison as long as he's doing the job of running the prison.
Right.
Just because you're an anarchist doesn't mean everyone gets to go free.
Right.
Like, that's a different issue, and it's not like Purnell is pushing atheism upon everybody.
Right.
There's no indication of that. So, stupid conflict that has no real argument.
That's pretty funny and enjoyable, though.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay. I didn't do that on purpose. OKCupid. That's what I'm about to talk about. So OKCupid every year releases a sort of study of sorts across their user base to find out what people see as a deal breaker, what's a must-have, what isn't. And apparently in 2017, Trump is, I think, the biggest dating deal breaker.
Like if you support him or voted for him?
Yes. So this survey garnered 27,000 responses from OKCupid members in the U.S., which is a lot, I feel like. And so Mark thinks it's important. Anyway, Trump gets people riled up, and apparently those are considered a major deal breaker for singles considering potential matches. 74% of OKCupid respondents answered hell no to the question, Trump? Whereas, guess how many people said hell yes?
10?
4%.
Oh, wow.
And then the softer answers are just no and yes. No still got 15% of the answer. Yes got 7. So almost 90% of OKCupid users are anti-Trump. I don't know why. I just find that really entertaining and funny.
That makes sense.
That super tracks. I mean, it tracks with the age of people who use that. People who use OKCupid tend to be urban,
meets the
probably.
Demographics.
Yeah, like it all tracks, but it's also like overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also wondering if there's more to it than just Trump, because odds are it's not that you support him. It's that you probably hold a lot of other views that are very strong and very unpopular.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what you and I have talked about this on this podcast of like, would you vote or would you vote? Would you date somebody who's Christian? Like, I don't know, probably, probably.
If they didn't hold such strong beliefs.
Right, if it didn't interfere with our kind of day-to-day. But I don't feel as confident in 2017 that I would date a Republican because actually, I can segue into something else. Mm-hmm. Oh, good job, Jessica. Good segues.
Nice.
So, I'm going to get back to sort of that point. There was an article in The Atlantic that said Democratic men are more likely to be feminist than Republican women. So, so this is extrapolated, or the numbers that they're using for this particular study are out of Alabama around the vote that happened last week. So it seems to these, according to these numbers, your gender has less to do with whether you're feminist
than your party affiliation.
Which I think
not
would track back to
me either.
Yeah, no, of course not. And that would track back down to what I was kind of talking about of like right now being Republican isn't just I want small government. It's I am fine.
There's a whole host of other views that go along with being that, and that's disturbing.
So what I thought was interesting, and I took notes, but it's literally like a page and a half worth because I don't know how to summarize things. So there was in September, a study by Leonie, Leonie? Leonie?
Okay.
Leonie Huddy and Joanna Willman of Stony Brook University. Stony Brook, I think, is where the Babysitters Club takes place, but I don't think that's them. So they presented a paper at the American Political Science Association. It's yet unpublished, but the author of this piece in The Atlantic got a copy. So they charted the effects of feminism on partisanship over time. And they found that between 2004 and 2016, the support for feminism grew increasingly correlated with the support for the Democratic Party. So in other words, there used to be kind of feminists on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, and now if you're feminist, you're almost certainly a Democrat. So one of the things they speculated is that one of the reasons for this was Hillary Clinton. So it was a liberal woman's emergence as a serious presidential contender in 2008, and then her party's nominee 8 years later, and it drove feminists of both genders toward the Democratic Party, and I think this is more important, anti-feminists of both genders toward the GOP.
They can have them.
Yeah, no, 100%. And they compare what Clinton did to what Barack Obama did in regard to race. They said Obama's election, this is Michael Tesler, who's a UCLA political scientist. He said that Obama's election pushed whites who exhibited more racial resentment into the Republican Party and whites who exhibited less into the Democratic Party. And I guess I've had that cause and effect kind of messed up in my mind, right? Like, I don't know. Like, it didn't occur to me that...
You thought they would have floated to those parties because their views were already in place?
Yes. It didn't, like... I guess maybe I was too optimistic about humanity to think that somebody would leave the Democratic Party because they were racist, or more currently, leave the Democratic Party because they're anti-feminist or anti-woman. Which obviously makes sense. It's just not something that occurs. I guess I just like GOP has always been the anti-woman racist party.
Yeah,
which obviously
surprising
isn't
that it's a new thing.
Yeah, like
this could have happened a long time ago too.
Right.
But yeah, when you nominate someone who holds those views and support someone who holds those views, it's not surprising they're like, all right, this is the party that's going to act on this stuff.
Right.
And I have no chance getting my views heard by this party. Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So earlier this month, a research firm, Perry Undum, found that Democratic men were 25 points more likely than Republican women to say sexism remains a big or somewhat big problem, which is disheartening.
Doesn't surprise me, and yes.
What a fucking bummer. Pew Research Center said Democratic men were 31 points more likely than Republican women to say, quote, the country has not gone far enough in women's rights. A year ago, Democratic men were more likely than Republican women, were 30 points more likely than Republican women to strongly agree that the country would be better off if we had more women in office. That gap has widened to 45 points.
Oh, wow.
So I think this really speaks a lot to internalized misogyny that I don't think we talk about a ton on this program, but I think there's a sort of misconception of if you are a woman, you can't be a misogynist. When the reality...
No, the GOP is full of women who support anti-women policies.
Exactly.
They would shut down Planned Parenthood if it meant a tax cut.
Yes,
things like
absolutely. That. Or, because they... Anyway, I think internalized misogyny is something that we're going to have to come to terms with pretty soon because they're sort of predicting a backlash against this... what's that?
The Me Too movement.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So they think that it will be led by anti-feminist women because anti-feminist women can't be labeled sexist as easily as anti-feminist men, which...
I read somewhere there was like there was a woman part of the alt-right who tweeted something like she's quitting like Breitbart or something because they were being sexist or they held these views.
Yeah.
It's like, how did you not know that?
Yeah, there's been a few articles like that the headlines are basically like conservative women are surprised when conservative men treat them like garbage because that's what they've told us they think we are. So anyway, I think internalized misogyny is something that we're going to sort of have to reckon with because, I mean, even I've had this. I just spent the evening with my friend Anne, who's been a guest host on this podcast, and we were talking a lot about sort of the remnants of gender norms that exist in our relatively progressive households, but it's still stuff you see every time. Like the women are always the one who bake and bring food and do the dishes and clean up and do this, do that, and it's one of those like, I don't know. I feel like in all other things, my family is pretty like sexually progressive. Oh, that was a God damn it. Oh,
not deleting that.
God damn it. We're pretty progressive in terms of gender roles.
Right.
But like, yeah, like you still see these things time and time again. And it's just so deeply ingrained in women that we are supposed to be doing these certain things. And so when women aren't the ones who are staying at home or are being too outspoken, it rubs many women the wrong way, just the same as it rubs many men the wrong way.
So I'd love to hear from listeners, if any of you who are single and are like, yeah, no, I would have no problem dating a Trump voter. Who are you? Tell us who you are. How does that work in your head?
I think they're going to start a fake Twitter account and fuck with us.
Oh, that could happen.
Don't do that. Anyway, so I just think that's sort of an interesting thing that's going on.
Here's another story that was in the news for a couple of days this week. And it involves a Milwaukee Catholic priest, Gregory Greiton, who told his congregation last weekend he basically came out as gay in front of his congregation. And he basically said, here's why I waited this long to come out. I was afraid, not just personally. He felt comfortable being gay, but just in his job. That might be weird. And so he told them, I'm Greg. I'm a Roman Catholic priest, and yes, I am gay. And he got a standing ovation from the congregation.
Oh, that's
which
nice.
Which sounds wonderful. Oh, God. There's nothing wrong.
Okay.
It doesn't go anywhere
you
beyond
hedged that a little bit too much. It sounds wonderful.
He doesn't sound like a bad guy or anything. But here's where my reaction to that. I'm like, I get why they gave him a standing ovation. I'm glad to hear they support him. My issue is that here's what this means for this guy. He now belongs to a church that thinks if he acts on his homosexuality or something,
right?
Has a boyfriend ever. I know they're Catholic priests. They can't even date even if they were straight. But if he were to have a partner, they would consider that deeply immoral. He has to be celibate. Granted, he's a priest. He would have to anyway. So it would apply even if he was straight. But he would not be allowed under the Catholic Church's rules to have sex. Like, it's just, he's openly gay, which is wonderful. I hope he can change the church for the better.
Yeah.
But as it stands, he is still part of an organization that treats people like him like garbage. And yes, he's a priest. That's a unique case. But if you're a gay Catholic who goes to church,
right,
you cannot have a boyfriend. You
Yes.
cannot have sex. You're not supposed to anyway, under their rules.
I think
it is considered intrinsically disordered to have homosexual acts, according to the Catechism.
Chill as usual, Catholic Church. I think the thing that leaves the worst taste in my mouth about this is that he got a standing ovation for coming out, which, like, great for them and great that they had that moment, but it just is super insincere and hypocritical to me of, oh, this guy's so, like, because presumably the standing ovation, oh, you're so brave, oh, we still support you, oh, like, that's what all of that would imply if somebody comes out and you give them whatever version of standing ovation you can, is you're supported and you're loved and we love you for who you are. But they don't. But everything else they do says that, no, like, you can't do that, and that's immoral. And I don't know. Just because he has to be celibate because he's a priest.
Right. I want to know from the congregation, I get why you support the priest. How do you support the church?
I mean, it completely reeks of, like, I have one black friend. You're one of the good ones. We like you.
Yeah,
like
something like that.
Or every fucking Republican in Congress who hates gay people until they have a gay kid, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, did you know gay people aren't made of poison?
Right.
Who would have known? It's just one of those things that, like, nothing affects them until it affects them personally.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good thing. I hope it does, because then maybe they could say, I don't want to be part of a church that treats gay people this way.
But,
Here's the question I'd love to know.
What, are we going to introduce them to every gay person person and be like, see,
Yeah.
most of the gay people are really nice and cool. Like, sure, there's some assholes, but there are more asshole Catholics, I bet.
So here's a question to ask this reverend, though,
Yeah.
and this is one of the commenters on my site pointed this out. What's he going to do when someone in his congregation comes out to him as gay? Because they don't have the celibacy mandate that priests do. They don't have the you have to be alone forever that priests do. What's he going to tell that kid?
Yeah,
who
probably
comes out
not
to
to
him as
act on
gay?
it, right?
Is he going to say, well, I support you being gay, but you're not allowed to have a boyfriend and you can't
Ever
have sex?
have sex with a person to whom you're attracted.
Right. Like, is that what he's going to say to these kids?
I mean,
that's the conflict of interest I'd love to know
That's towing
about.
the company line, right? Like, what else could he say?
Right. And so that really will be the test. So all the articles focused on the reaction, him coming out and the reaction
And that
he
is
got.
nice. That's
which is
very
nice. But the real question is, how is he going to handle this issue moving forward? Because he's obviously not the only gay priest.
Right.
But if he's going to go public about it, which is great, I feel like these are fair questions to ask this guy to any reporter who's going to talk to him.
And I mean, I don't know. I don't
Some
think...
people called it, he's in bed with the enemy by being openly gay in the Catholic Church.
And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. I mean, but that's always the argument there of like, if you don't agree with X about this community that you're part of, whether it's religion or whether it's science or whether it's whatever.
Like you're a Democrat who doesn't like this one policy thing. That's a big deal.
So do you throw out the baby with the bathwater? Do you flip the table and say fuck it?
I thought about that, and I don't know that it's an entirely fair analogy, only because there's a difference between, this group I belong to holds a position that I don't agree with, versus this group I belong to thinks people like me specifically are, disordered. They think I have some sort of mental illness because I'm gay. There's a big difference in that.
Yeah, you're right.
Because at least with the policy issues, we could debate them. I could argue and make my point as to why we need to change it. This is, in theory, unchangeable.
That's canonical. So then I guess what's the point of staying? Well, I guess they're going to accept him because
he's gay and celibate and forever
Right.
alone. So they're fine with him. He's not one of the threatening ones to the church. But
which it's so funny because to me, I would feel like that would be something the church would hate to have, because then all of a sudden you have a sympathetic ear in the pulpit.
Yeah.
Is that where they are?
But again, the church has been pretty clear. Even Pope Francis himself has said, like, who am I to judge? I don't care if you're gay or whatever. But that's only because the rules prohibit you from acting on your homosexuality. So there's a big difference. The church doesn't deserve credit for merely being tolerant of gay people. They should only get credit when they really accept them and treat them that way, and they don't.
For a long time, tolerance was what we were sort of aiming for, but to say Hemet, I tolerate your existence is literally, I'm not going to willfully try to exterminate you personally, but I don't have to fucking like you. Tolerance is such a low bar to clear.
Especially today, and especially for the church.
Today.
You should be able to do better than that, and they don't, which segues perfectly into this story. Guess who's dead?
Oh, God, how did I miss this one?
Yeah, Cardinal Law, Cardinal Bernard Law, who was known during the child abuse scandal that the Boston Globe did with Spotlight and all that the movie was about. That whole child abuse scandal, Cardinal Bernard Law wasn't the guy who molested children, but he was the guy who knew which priests were doing it. And he just moved them around to different churches.
Yeah.
He covered it up as much as possible.
He
was the reason
great.
this was such a scandal, because when people would come to the church and say this is happening, his response was not to get rid of those priests and speak out against it. It was to hide what was going on and move those priests elsewhere where they were just exposed to more kids. So this is the guy who died. Pope Francis spoke at his funeral.
Oh, really?
He didn't say this is the greatest man who ever
This
lived.
guy did such a good job of protecting pedophiles.
He didn't do that, but he showed up, and that's symbolic in and of itself.
Did you see the Onion headline on Wednesday?
What was that?
Cardinal Law canonized following miracle of escaping criminal prosecution. Man, I can never get prosecution right. Why did they make those words so similar? It feels like a personal...
will blame somebody.
Okay.
So I didn't feel, it's one of those things you don't want to make fun. You don't celebrate someone's death, but you do want to acknowledge this person made so many people's lives worse.
Yes.
This person ruined their lives because the sort of things they experienced haunted them through adulthood, their childhood, adulthood.
I mean, I would put him in a similar category to Fred Phelps of this guy did... Like, obviously,
though Fred Phelps was probably even better because all he did was scream from like his little bubble.
Yeah.
It's not
this guy had power.
This guy had power, yeah. And he used it to let more kids be abused. There's a group called Survivors Network of those abused by priests, SNAP. This group has been around for a while, and the director's reaction to his death was pretty blunt. I don't think there's going to be any great sadness. That's it.
Yeah, and that's fine. And like, yeah, later, like, I'm fine that you're gone. I don't wish death upon anybody, but like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
See you never.
And I hope other priests, I hope other archbishops see that, and they're like, wow, for all he may have done for the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And I did see this criticism, like, man, people are only listing this one horrible thing that it's like people talking about Joe Paterno and the rape scandal and stuff. It's like, why do they keep mentioning that? Because that's the only important thing anyone
nobody
cares
talks about O.J. Simpson's illustrious football and acting career anymore.
Right.
It's like the one bad thing he did marred everything. Like, yeah, bro, that's how shit works in the world.
I hope they realize that, and I hope they're like, oh, like, no one's going to be on my side here, to the point where even the church isn't going to have my back. So there's no reason to do the cover-up. There's no reason to protect the priests who do this sort of thing. So whatever. Goodbye. I don't... What else you got?
The only thing I have left is...
As one commenter said, I almost wish there was a hell, so I knew that guy would go there.
That Mirriam-Webster named feminism as the 2017 word of the year. The term generated 70% more searches than last year. It spiked after the Women's March. It spiked after Kellyanne Conway told the Conservative Political Action Conference that it was hard for her to call herself anti-feminist because, quote, it seemed to be very anti-male and very pro-abortion. Then there was The Handmaid's Tale came out, Wonder Woman came out, Me Too movement happened. It's a very interesting... year for that word. Another top word of the year is dictionary.com's complicit.
I like it.
So I don't know where they got that one from.
Yeah.
It seems pretty... Anyway.
Nice.
So I think that's cool. Because looking up feminism isn't necessarily like... It's just people were interested in what it meant and looking it up for themselves, which is good because the alternative is...
Taking someone else's definition
Conway's
for
version of it. And
another shitty year comes to an end.
Yeah. No, well, it's not quite over because we still have to do our year-end recap.
We do.
I slated some time with my friend Kate, who helped me with the spreadsheet last year. So I'm going to have it ready for next Friday.
All right.
Assuming we're recording next Friday.
Sure we are.
Yeah, it's the 29th, I think. So perfect. It'll come out on New Year's Eve or something.
That's when everyone will listen. Don't go to parties.
Just sit quietly in your basement and listen to our dumb podcast.
That's what I do.
Yeah. So, do you have anything else for today?
No, I'm good. Let's go home.
Cool. What are you up to for Christmas?
Family, lots of family stuff. All good.
Me too. More family stuff.
Yeah.
My happy thing of the week, since you did not ask.
What's your happy thing of the week?
Rude asshole. So my happy thing of the week is I just bought the ingredients for an old family recipe. An old family recipe my mom has made forever. My grandmother made it before her. And it's my Italian side of the family. Now, I did some research on this, actually, because we've always called it bucciolati in my house. And it's bread and onions and sausage, and it's like wrapped up and baked. It's delicious. I cannot recommend it enough. My family also, I think, has made up a lot of Italian terms that they told me growing up. Because, like, they always told me gulli was the Italian word for butt. Met an Italian guy, asked him. He said, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, you crazy American. Similarly, bucciolati apparently is some sort of, like, Italian cookie.
Okay.
So, I don't know if this exists anywhere outside, like, the Angolia side of my family. But,
So you're going to eat food that no one knows if it's an actual food?
Well, it's definitely a food. I'm gonna say it right here. It's an actual food, but it's the easiest thing. If anybody wants to make it, everybody fucking loves it. You saute like 3 pounds of onions and get 3 rolls of like pizza dough and then put the onions and a pound of raw Italian sausage between the 3 things, roll them up, bake them at like 350 for however long the package says. It's so delicious. It is the first thing my in-laws liked about me, that I brought this delicious bread to
I will
their
take your
family
word
thing.
on all of this.
Oh yeah, you don't eat sausage.
No.
Hammett, where can we find you on the Twitter? Was this a short episode?
They're all long.
They're all like prohibitively long.
I'm at Hammett Meta on the Twitters.
I'm at Blueberry, BLUEBURIE. My Etsy shop is Bitches Get Stitched Done. I'm still fucking swamped, so
good.
I
Yay.
thought it would die down after Christmas, and I'm grateful for the money, but I'm also very tired.
That's all right. You're sitting in your dungeon on New Year's Eve listening to the podcast. So it's all good.
Yeah, I have to listen to my own podcast. That's my penance for the year. Anything else that we have going on?
If you have any stories you want us to cover for the year in review, you should let us know in the next few days.
Please do.
friendlyatheistpodcast@gmail.com.
@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook. Oh, we don't have a specific Facebook page, do we?
Just Google us. You'll find us.
Okay, cool.
Thanks,
this is
everyone.
a really high
Have a good
energy
one.
ending. Bye.
Bye.